It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up.
So welcome everybody. What a nice afternoon, and you're all joining us here for an exciting conversation. Feeding the planet, will Foodtech save us? Now, those of you who actually don't know about the topic, some of you probably are experts, so bear with us. It's about feeding the planet. We're obviously talking about the number of people that are on the planet and living a healthy life, having enough food to eat to do that. At the same time, we're talking about climate action, doing that sustainably, and where does the food come from? It's about agriculture, and it's about whole food system. And why is that relevant in a conversation? It's about, on the one hand, if you look at climate change, it's actually one of the drivers of global hunger. There's right now up to 800 million hungry people on this planet as we speak. And that's unfortunate because there's enough food on the planet even right now to feed everybody. But climate change actually deteriorates so that some of the most vulnerable people, they have no chance and they don't have actually access to that type of food. At the same time, global food systems are responsible for about a third of man-made greenhouse gases. So if you think about what can we do to save the planet, what can we do to get into a future that's inclusive for all, of course we also need to talk about food systems feeding the planet, and that's what we're here for. So we already had an introduction and we were talking about the interesting aspect that both of this esteemed panel of women is actually working on. And what I actually then want to talk about, and let's just say, in the first question, what's the state of feeding the planet? What's the state of the world right now? And let me start with Melanie here. I mean, you work at BASF. So at BASF, you're working a lot on agri-inputs, also on other aspects of agriculture, but can we feed the planet?
I think we're all well aware, and we've seen it in the past weeks, that farmers are facing a lot of challenges. They're the main producers of our food, and they're facing a situation where the global world population is increasing. We're at 7 billion now. We will be most likely around 10 billion in 2050. We have a significantly increasing demand for not only food, but also fuels, fiber, and feed. And farmers will have to face these challenges while at the same time being asked to do it in a more sustainable fashion, to use less resources while arable land is decreasing. So what the farmer really needs to be able to balance sustainable agriculture and productivity, feeding the world, to increase food production by 50% is a full toolbox. And that's where BASF also comes in as one of the players, where our innovation pipeline needs to look at multiple existing and new technologies to help the farmer achieve that food production. And that can be nitrogen stabilizers, to use fertilizers more efficient to make sure that we have a reduced greenhouse gas emission on the fields. It can be new crop variety that are stress resistant, don't need as much water, have a higher yield. It can be a conventional classical chemistry, so herbicides, the next generation sustainable herbicides to help the farmer need less tillage and thereby reduce again greenhouse gas emission from the fields and reduce diesel fuel usage. Or, and I truly believe that's one of the areas where we have the biggest advantage, digital solutions, really innovative digital solutions, high precision agriculture. So BASF is doing Savio Field Manager, where you have real-life data of the field, and it tells you exactly where to target, apply high-precision agriculture to get the best out of your fields. And I think there's a lot of challenges, and it will need combined efforts from all of the players in the value chain.
No, and it's a very interesting aspect that you're talking about this, where it's on the one hand, you see population growth. Of course, also diets and what people eat have a big influence, right? If everybody starts eating like Western Europe and the US on the planet, we will have a big issue. Now, this is a challenge, right? When we're talking about food systems, soil, it's aspects that we really need to tackle as well and really think about, where's the food coming from of the future? Also talking about climate, soil, carbon emissions that are going to come out of it. But maybe, Deanna, let me get you, as John, you're working on agri-tech, of course, among other things. Now, you have a global lens on what you're working on. So, like, what developments have actually happened in the last couple of years? Are people still driving the same tractors from like 20 years ago, or like what's happening?
Well, I would submit that the last 20 years in agriculture have maybe been some of the most advancing years in agriculture, and you only have to look at the productivity that the industry's been able to manage. Since the turn of the century, agriculture has increased global grain and oilseed production by 60%. So 60% increase in the number of bushels, from 2.1 trillion bushels to 3.4 trillion bushels of grains and oilseeds that agriculture has been able to create. And that increase in production comes mainly from technologies that companies like BASF and their input cohort create, but also technologies that help farmers do the jobs they do better, plant better, spray better, and harvest more efficiently. And that gives us a tremendous opportunity to meet the challenge of a global food need head on. And I'm confident that agriculture will continue to drive even more productivity because we're bringing new tools to the table. We started 25 years ago with GPS and data acquisition in agriculture. We've moved through cloud technologies, and now agriculture is using computer vision and machine learning to help farmers drive both productivity and sustainability on the farm.
Very nice. And like, of course, talking about agriculture, farmers, one aspect that actually is really true is that a lot of farmers are smallholder farmers. So farmers that have a very small acreage, like not a lot of land. Now, this is where Nidhi comes in. And like, all the three ladies that are sitting on this panel are celebrities in their own right. Nidhi, among other things, has won the Earthshot Prize by Prince William last year. So, yes, you can give her a hand. So, very good. Nidhi, maybe, I mean, I want to talk about smallholder farmers, but maybe just for a start, like what, you're leading a company called S4S Technologies. What do you actually do?
Thank you, everyone. S4S stands for Science for Society. We work with smallholder farmers. We help them convert their lower grade produce by helping them become processors. So we help them get more value for their produce, help them set small farm factories so that instead of, say, selling a tomato, they can now sell a ketchup. We not only provide them with technologies such as solar dehydrators, grain millers, biomass-based milk evaporators, but also access to affordable financing. Most of these women are new to credit. They don't have any collateral for them to invest in the technology. And then whatever they make, we aggregate, we do quality control, and we sell it to large off-takers such as Nestle, Indian Railways, Sodexo. So we are working at the intersection of access to energy, reducing food wastage, and also providing farmers enhanced livelihood and help them adapt to climate change. Thank you.
Very nice. And so what's your perspective on like smallholder farmers? Like, is the world going to change, or like will smallholder farmers have a role in the future in global food system?
46% of total food needs of the world is met by smallholder farmers. And we all know that they are the ones who are most vulnerable to climate change. What we are seeing is that they are now the biggest partners for us to fight climate change because the soil that is there can capture more than 2 times of carbon that is available in the atmosphere. So we see farmers first as a key partner to adapt to climate change because they are the ones who are going to help us meet the world needs, but also they are going to help agriculture meet the net zero emissions target.
That's a very good point. And like, I want to shift gears so it's like, you know, the problems, right? Like, what are the problems and how can we tackle them, right? Because we see, and like you heard it, there's population growth maybe up to 10 billion people on the planet. You know, we're talking about other aspects of, you know, hunger still being on the rise actually right now. So like we're living in a global hunger crisis. There's 309 million acutely hungry people. What that means is they are marching towards starvation. So it's probably about like almost 4 times the size of Germany. That's the amount, like the number of people that will be dying of hunger if nothing else changes. Now, these are of course problems that we all need to care about. What we also do is World Food Programme, and we do with our innovation work is Innovation Accelerator. But maybe talking about soil degradation, climate change, starting with you again, Melanie, like, one topic that we're talking about before is carbon farming. I'm not sure how many people know this here in the audience, but like, what is carbon farming and why should we care?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So we've discussed already we have to increase productivity, but at the same time we want to reduce negative environmental impact. We want to use the resources that we have more sustainable. So carbon farming is a collaborative effort. It's not a single company that does it, but carbon farming at BASF means we're connecting stakeholders from upstream companies like ours all the way to the farmers to look at agricultural practices that can either bind CO2 from the atmosphere into soil and crops or minimize the emission of greenhouse gases. So any practice that you can use, whether that's again in the area of nitrogen stabilizers or applying better digital precision tools, low tillage, looking at soil health, anything you can do to, from the start to the end, use climate-friendly practices that help the farmer to bind CO2 from the atmosphere. And it has to have a reward for the farmer. So they need to feel an intrinsic benefit by having similarly high yield and productivity while at the same time using less resources. And that program connects multiple stakeholders because not one company alone can solve the problem. It really has to be a collaborative effort.
Yeah, let's talk about the farmers because, like, Deanna, like, I want to talk about this for a second because when people think about tractors, a lot of them just think that, wow, it's like, okay, that's so you don't have less work. But maybe that's not everything that a tractor does or that mechanization does. How can technology help us, save the environment and at the same time, make more money for the farmers so they have an incentive to do that?
Yeah, well, the tractor is an important tool on the farm, no doubt, and it helps to drive productivity. And in a world in which farmers need to operate in tight windows of time because of weather and other things, the tractor is an important part. Thankfully, as an employee of John Deere, I'm glad that tractors are important. But also, in agriculture, we're moving from bigger, faster, stronger to easier, smarter, and more precise. And this precision comes in as we have collected data on the farm for 25 years. We've leveraged GPS on the farm to allow the tractor to drive itself in the field. We talk a lot about autonomy in the world, but in agriculture, it's all about automation. How do we help the farmer do every single job they do in an accurate and precise way? And then it's more than just the mechanics and the physical in agriculture, it's the data. And as Melanie said, in agriculture today, more than ever before, the industry has come together to work together. So that data that John Deere helps the farmer collect as they plant and care for the crop, and as they harvest the crop, we can help that farmer share it with the folks who are helping them make decisions about what seeds to plant and when to plant them. And this ecosystem of data that has been created because companies like John Deere have connected every single machine makes a tractor much more than just horsepower. It's brains and horsepower today.
No, it is a very interesting aspect, like, because the aspect of like smarter decision making, like also like, and I think this is when we're talking about like also the future data, digital AI. One of the interesting aspects there is like, of course, you can also make these tools all of a sudden accessible to smaller farmers. Now, Nidhi, in terms of smaller farmers, what do you think? Like, what's the biggest lever for them to produce more food and like tackle climate change?
I think the biggest challenge that we are trying to solve for smallholder farmers is that there are a lot of potential in technology, but there are very different business models that work for smallholder farmers, because when you put them at the center, you know that their lands are small, that their affordability is going to be much different from large holder farmers. So what we need there is, first, is to find various different business models through which they can get access to technologies such as John Deere or what BASF is doing. Second is that there are many misconceptions that are there in the minds of the smallholder farmers, as they are not that much literate for them to adopt new technology, and this behavioral change cycle takes very long. And till the time they are at that level, the technology has again changed. So the faster we need to drive behavioral change, we need a lot of investment in trainings, capacity building, for them to understand what will this technology do for them. This is a great technology, but how does it change their lives? Does this help them earn better or reduce their crops? Because when you look at them, their risk and responsibility to meet world's food need is, on a daily basis, they are taking those decisions. So for them to actually have the know-how is really important. And third is the affordable financing mechanisms, as well as conceptualizing all of this in the context of smallholder farmers. Just giving an example, that in the villages that we work, there is only a single-phase electricity. There is no access to energy first. So for them to actually start doing anything, any new venture or have access to any newer technology, that needs to be also solved for them. So business models that actually are more tailor-made or to meet their needs is something that we feel is going to drive the technology adoption. So one is access to market, finance, as well as doing more training and capacity building for them.
Exactly. And for any of the founders in the audience, that's the type of customer centricity or user centricity that you should look for. It's like, this is exactly, it's a great example. And like I'm saying this where, if you're working with smaller farmers, a lot of times you are actually, or even regular farmers, take a farmer here in Germany. If you go to them and say like, hey, I built this cool AI blockchain solution, and it's like, this is how you're gonna do it. Like, they already shut off. Like what you're pointing out is really like, how do you change people's lives? By changing people's lives, like, you know, people inherently care about the planet, but it's like also like, how does it actually change your livelihood? Do you have a higher income? Do you have less work? I mean, these are all relevant questions that you have to ask yourselves. And the point about like how to make this technology accessible is actually really interesting. Maybe, I don't know, Deanna, like, I mean, making technology accessible, maybe you have an idea like there, it's like so.
Well, first and foremost, I would say I have had the pleasure and opportunity to visit farmers all over the world: India, Africa, South America, US, Canada, Europe. But everywhere I go, what I find is that every farm I visit has an opportunity to adopt some technology to take them to the next level. And farmers around the world are all at various stages of technology adoption. Even in my home country of the United States, you go on some farms and they have not taken on the technology, and you go to others and they taken on most of it, but every one of them has a chance to take on a next technology. And companies like John Deere and startups like Nidhi's are working hard to make those connections of not just here's cool technology, but this is the next step you can take, whether it's us connecting farmers in India with a smartphone app, or working in Africa with Hello Tractor to create groups of people that can leverage technologies.
So maybe say, well, what does Hello Tractor do? Like, because for people in the audience who don't know them.
So Hello Tractor is a startup in Africa who brings together small acre farmers who need mechanization, but on their own can't afford it. And they create clusters of farms, and then they help new entrants, typically women in Africa, finance and acquire a tractor, and then become a contractor to all these other smallholder farmers, which allows mechanization in agriculture, which allows scale and productivity that can help make these folks successful in the long run.
Nice. Melanie, maybe any innovation that you say, well, that's really inspirational, how we can tackle climate change, how we can make progress, like anything that comes to your mind?
I think there's no silver bullet. It won't be one innovation, but it's really about connecting. It's about the innovative power in the different stages at the value chain to connect it, and to keep in mind that the farmers are really in the center of this transformation. They will have to carry the hard load of making sure that we can feed the planet, and we need to work together to give them the toolbox that they need to get it. I wouldn't bring it down to one silver bullet, that might be too easy. But digitalization will play an important role in precision agriculture.
Nidhi, what would you say? Like, what's a big innovation, like the most inspirational example? I mean, you can also say like your own work is inspirational. It is. Maybe as a background. So Nidhi actually was on stage at GreenTech Festival last year already on the pitch slam we actually organized, and only afterwards she received the Earthshot Prize. Just saying. Nidhi, I don't know, what's inspirational? I mean, you can say like your own startup, but like, what would you say?
What we have seen is that any technology that puts the farmers at the center, we've seen many smartphone innovations, digital access to advisory, really do wonders by just giving them small data points. So for us, the technology does not have to be very high tech, but it needs to be changing something for them. I think where we see the potential is that similar to the digital innovation that we've seen farmers adapt to, like nowadays in India, there are farmers who shop for tractors online, like they look at YouTube videos, and I think that is itself also a type of innovation that we don't see in a more mainstream environment, but those innovations where the AI, ML, and all the newer age models need to be designed for the farmers. So where it is in their local language, and then is when they are giving them very precise indicators, because they are actually a friend to them. So what I would really like to see is that all the language models are adapted to in the local context, in the language of the local farmers, and provide them with really insightful information for them to actually get better in their farming practices.
No, and I think just to add to this, like what gives me hope, and like as background as World Food Programme Innovation Accelerator, we are running 20 social impact startup accelerators this year on emergency response, ending hunger. We're also running now an accelerator program for the adaptation fund this year for the next 5 years. What gives me hope, when I look at our startup portfolio, we also care about whether the startups grow and they get investment, but we care about, do they actually help people, right? And this is something where, we have over 60 million people that are benefiting from, solutions like Nidhi here on stage, like they improve people's lives. And that's what we should be caring about, and that gives me hope in this space of innovation. Now we're gonna come to one of my most favorite questions, which is, and I'm gonna ask it to all of the ladies, what is one common misconception? So something that's, probably say is wrong or definitely wrong about food and agri-tech. Melanie.
I would say for me it's the perception that we could feed the 7 billion today purely with organic farming.
Okay.
So it has an important role to play, no question asked, and we need the full toolbox. But if you look at just look at Europe, 7% of the arable land that's currently being organically farmed is not going to be sufficient, even if you expand it to feed even just Europe. But also from a world perspective, I think we tend to put up societal and political pressure on the coexistence of technologies, and I think that's where I really think we need to be aware that in order to feed the 10 billion, in order for farmers to increase their food production by 50%, it has to be a mix of existing and new technologies, and it will for sure not only be organic farming. So that's where
nice. So a controversial one for some of the people in the audience. So very good.
I know. And I have a 3-year-old. I do also buy organic, but I don't think that I can feed everyone.
Deanna, what do you say? What's common misconception?
Yeah, one of the most common misconceptions for me is that people believe farmers aren't focused on sustainability. When in fact, farmers are 100% focused on sustainability, and that's for 2 really important reasons. Number one, the land that they farm is typically their land, has been passed on from generation to generation, and it is what they will pass on to their next generation. And for them, making sure that land is better than when they received it is a big part of what they do. The second reason why farmers are focused on sustainability is because the economics in agriculture are 100% aligned to a more sustainable world in which they use less chemicals, less seed, and less fertilizer to grow more food. And so in agriculture, it's beautiful because you are incented both economically to reduce your inputs, but also the environment benefits when you do that as well. So farmers are some of the most sustainably minded focused people I know.
So this is where, again, like it's an interesting question because oftentimes like there's the dichotomy of like, well, you want to produce food, like very, very interesting point. Nidhi, what would you say?
The biggest misconception that we see is that hunger is caused because we are not producing enough food, but that is not true. Hunger is caused because we are also wasting 1/3 of total food that is produced. If food wastage was a country, it would be a size of India and Canada combined, and it would be releasing greenhouse gas, which would be third largest in the entire world. So wasting food is also one of the biggest reasons is why we are not able to feed the world.
But I would just add, like, I think one aspect and a misconception that I get a lot from people is that, the feeling that, you can't actually do anything about it, or like we're in this situation and like this is a problem that cannot be fixed. It actually can be fixed, and I think what all of your examples actually give here is like it gives for me a sign of hope, stuff that you can do with innovation, technology, digital, with startups, that you can actually have a positive influence on global hunger, food production, but also climate. So just to add my 2 cents here. Maybe, we're running almost out of time, 30 seconds each. What's one thing that you would like the audience to be thinking about as they walk out of this session?
And I'll say it again, the farmer is at the core of the transformation of agriculture that's going to happen in the next 10 years. Agriculture in 10 years will look different than it does look today. And it really is about a coexistence of technology, and digital is going to play the biggest important role in it. So precision agriculture is going to be one of the important
Okay. Deanna?
Yeah, for me, this is about if we're going to feed the planet in a sustainable way, it's going to take all of us. And I only think about technology that John Deere has brought to market called See and Spray technology that was first founded by people in Silicon Valley who really had no background in agriculture, but learned about the opportunity to bring computer vision and machine learning to identify weeds from healthy plants and only spray the weeds. And because people with technology backgrounds came together with people who understood customers and talked to farmers, then were we able to create these technologies that will help us create more food in a more sustainable way. And so that means that each one of us can bring our talents to the table, learn and understand what happens, where our food comes from, and bring all of those ideas together in order for us to solve what is a huge opportunity for us.
Thank you. Nidhi.
No one has food security until everyone has food security. So that is what I would like to see, that how can we provide technical, financial, and climate change solutions for smallholder farmers for them to adapt to climate change.
No, and just in closing, like, and I think this is what, if all of you here today, you're taking one thing with you, saying like, maybe one thing you learned about, feeding the planet, about climate change and hunger, maybe about technology solutions or innovations or misconceptions that we were talking about, I think that's it's a very, very powerful point that you can actually take with you and actually think about like what each and every one of us can do. And like, and I think this is an aspect that's oftentimes overlooked, where we have so much power in whether it's in our daily choice on what foods we buy, on if you're working on something that, like maybe with your products. I mean, it is a great example of like, you might not even know it that you have developed a computer vision algorithm that might be the transformation of the future, right? And I think that's an interesting aspect, like just take this thought with you, and also think about like, it's not about a single person, a single bullet, a single technology. It takes all of us. And maybe, I don't know, maybe one of you want to become a farmer. We heard it's cool. We heard it's going to be less work. And we heard it's going to save the environment. So what if not something cool to actually be working on feeding the planet and also save it at the same time? With that, I want to say thank you again to the esteemed panel. Thank you very much.